Welcome to Cycle Breakers and Moneymakers, a podcast for women of color and first gen who are breaking generational cycles and glass ceilings by going places no one before them has ever gone. I'm your host, leadership coach, and eldest daughter of immigrants, Mariela Delamora. I left a 16-year marketing career to create a multiple six-figure-a-year coaching business as a single mom. Each week, you'll learn how to build unshakable self-trust, become in demand, lead with confidence, and make more money by being more of who you are. Hello, y'all. Welcome to another episode of Cycle Breakers and Moneymakers. This week is going to be good. It's going to be something that is going to save you so much time and money. I cannot tell you. This is probably one of the number one things that I see people throw so much money at because they don't actually learn the skill. And so it keeps them in a consumption loop. And I'm talking about strategy. How do you know which one is right for you? Social media trends, algorithm shifts, webinars versus growing through reels versus is it a funnel or do you do ads or do you do speaking engagements or what do you do, right? And so every time you open your phone and you scroll, you are seeing what you should be doing, what this person did to grow, what is the market trends. And I say market in air quotes because I'm going to talk to you about the market and what that actually means. And so I have just seen this and I have coached on this for 5 years. And it is the thing that spins people out the most because they are constantly looking around what they are supposed to be doing. And there are multiple people that are advocating for different things, generally because that was the approach that they used to grow their business. And so granted, they're going to talk about it and how to do it well. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. But the problem is when you don't know how to decide what is best for your business, for your ideal clients and the way that you want to grow, then you're going to be in a nonstop consumption loop, looking around, changing strategies, thinking that you need to pay people to tell you what to do. Now, there is some truth to that. There's some truth to that of where hiring a coach or messaging person can absolutely help. But what I'm going to talk to you about is universal to anything you will ever sell ever. I say this with confidence because I was a person who sold many, many things. And me as a marketer, my ability to sell things did not depend on have I sold this thing before, right? Because when you're a marketer, it doesn't matter if you've sold something. Granted, it can help if you've been in an industry. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's insurance or whether it's tech, like software as a service, or it's shampoo or whatever it is. Marketers know how to think about what do we need to do to sell this thing. That is what I am going to talk to you about. What I'm going to talk to you about today is universal. It is universal. And I want you to take it with you and let it be a filter. So anytime you are scrolling on Instagram or you go to an event and they're talking to you about this tactic, you're going to be like, okay, how applicable is this for my business model and my client and the way the marketing funnel, the way that I want to market, and how urgently do I want to employ this tactic if I actually want to employ it? So let me talk to you a little bit about why I'm telling you this story as well. So it's not just because of the consumption loop and looking around at what to do. I'm also telling you this because as a coach, what I have noticed, especially in women of color and daughters of immigrants, we were taught to be good students and to achieve, right? And so typically that looks like doing well in school. There is a structure and a strategy for that, right? You know what to do to be good in school. There's a curriculum, you get good grades, you do your homework, you pass the tests, right? So that helps you all the way through college. And then even in the workforce, there are KPIs that you need to meet. There's job responsibilities. There's coworkers. There's a system that you plug into. And we already are taught from birth that you need to work harder than everybody else in the room in order to succeed. So what happens is we then go into business. And what we do is we then look for somebody to play the role of teacher or parent or somebody telling you what to do. Right? And so we don't do this consciously, but we just assume somebody is telling me what I need to do and I need to do it. It's not to say that you shouldn't, but you have to develop your own decision-making filters and your own discernment, or you are going to be scrambling back and forth forever. Right? So this is the difference. And coaches will even tell you this, that they're just like, hey, take it or leave it. But like, how do you know what to take and what to leave? This episode is going to talk to you about that. So first, what I want to do is I'm going to talk to you about the difference between tactics and strategy. I'm going to talk to you about trends. Not all trends are relevant to you. How do you figure out which ones you even want to pay attention to? Then I'm going to walk you through the questions you need to be asking yourself to decide what approaches are relevant for your business to get you the results you want, no matter what you're selling ever, ever, ever. Okay? So let's start. So first of all, there's a difference between tactics and strategy. Tactics are what we often see. Tactics is a doing of a thing. Do this thing. That is a tactic. So tactics typically are what, when we see it spoken about, are what helped that particular creator or that particular mentor to get their results. So let me give you some examples of tactics. Webinars are a tactic, often employed in the coaching industry, right? Let's say ads to a low ticket funnel, to a tripwire upsell, right? So when you like go to the cart, it's like, oh, do you want to spend an extra X amount of money to get this add on? Yes, no. So ads to low ticket funnels to a tripwire upsell. That is a tactic. Reels are a tactic, right? And there's some people whose whole job is to talk to you about how to do them well. Shannon McKinstry is someone that I follow. Love her, right? So if you want to do that well, there's certain creators and certain experts that will teach you how to do that well, and depending on what your goals are. Other things, social selling, right? So if you're selling a product, like how can you do this through social selling? That could be a thing that you see on like TikTok where creators are actually using the product. Social selling is a tactic. Short form video, we're talking about short form video is the future. We all need to be doing short form video. And so these are the things that people are like, oh my God, I need to start doing short form video. That's like YouTube shorts or reels with the intention of growth. So if you create a reel with the intention of virality because it's universally appealing, it's easy for people to engage with, it's typically not very deep in terms of what you're talking about. It's just sort of like something that is more likely to be seen by more eyes. That's a short form video tactic. These are all tactics. They are not strategies. Okay. The difference between a tactic and a strategy is that a strategy is based on who is your ideal client. Where are they? What are their behaviors? Are they even on social media? How do they use social media? What do they need in order to buy your particular product or service, right? So that all matters. And then based on like data that you have in your own business. So like you've already probably sold this thing. If you already sold this thing, you've got data. The decisions that you make on the other side of that information is a strategy. You can pull tactics. You can decide tactics are like an ingredient, right? So if you are just like, well, I got this ingredient and that ingredient and that ingredient, what you need to do is create a recipe. What is the recipe I'm trying to fill? That is the strategy. What are you trying to do? Does this ingredient even fit in this recipe, right? And if so, how much? That's the difference. Is for you to create any result, you have to know why you're doing what you're doing and what makes sense. And does this tactic make sense for me? Is it relevant to me? How would I employ it, right? That's different. So with that being said, it's like when you think about if you were to go to the doctor and you say like, I have a pain in my like leg or something, there's a lot of tactics. If you were to just say, I have a pain in my leg in Google and say, what do I do? They'd probably be like, oh, it could be arthritis. It could be that you hurt your leg. You could have sprained your ankle. They're going to give you a bunch of tactics, right? But without you going to the doctor and having them ask you more questions, and they're going to say, well, they're going to ask you questions about your history. They're going to ask you about things that you've done. They may ask you about your diet. They may ask you about like things that happen in the family. They may do an x-ray. They may do different things. And based on that information, they're going to say, here is the strategy for you to address this pain in your leg. Because we have asked you the questions and we have done the diagnostics and this is the strategy. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of people giving you opinions, right? And that is a lot of what tactics are, is people do the tactic well, but that doesn't mean the tactic is relevant to you. Same thing with trends. This is the trend and that is the trend and social media this and like, oh, this is like market shifts and all these things. Like you're literally like, not all of this is relevant to you. This is leadership. This is business growth. This is a relevant, non-negotiable skill that you are going to have as an entrepreneur, or you're going to continue to outsource it to other people that are telling you what to do, and you're not going to have the context yet to understand what to take and what to leave. So now, what do we do instead? So again, what I'm going to share applies to literally anything you ever sell in any market ever. Okay. So before I go into the 3, you're going to be like, please just dive into the 3. I'm telling you the story because I want you to know that this is actually how real life works. Like outside of the coaching industry, outside anybody that sells on social media, this is how business works. I once was in an interview for a company that was a startup, and this startup, I'm telling you this because I'm like, this is actually what skills are valuable in the real world. It isn't like coming in and how ridiculous I would have looked walking into this job interview being like, yes, I know exactly what we would do. I had walked into a job interview and it was for a tech startup, and the product was centralizing certifications, right? So they were solving a gap in the market, right? Which is what I always talk about. Any business should be based in solving a gap in the market, not a niche. A niche is just an unvalidated preference, right? We need to solve for gaps in the market. And the gap in the market is there's different kinds of certifications that exist in the world, but there's no way to centralize them. And sometimes the company that needs to know, am I hiring a certified person, has to go through different processes in order to find does this person actually sign up for certification? So this company exists to centralize all certifications. And then essentially their clients would be any organization who hires or works with people who need a certification, whether it's skydiving instructors, whether it's, therapy, whether it's, whatever this is. And so I walked into this interview, and the person that was interviewing me was the person who launched Airbnb. Like she had launched, I don't know if it was like Lyft, all kinds of companies, right? So she's like, if you're in the marketing world, like she is just like the goddess, right? Like you really are like, holy shit, she's going to be interviewing me. So she has developed the go-to-market strategies for many unicorn companies, many of which are on your phones right now. And I went into this interview, and the thing is that I didn't know right? That like what the quote unquote right answer was. All I could do was be honest. So I walked into this interview. She talked to me about the product. She talked to me about the need and all the things. And then she asked me like, what strategy would you employ? Right. And I don't know if some of this is like trick questions, but I asked her questions and I was like, okay, who are they? Like, where are they at? How would we think about this? This is one thing that I would think about. I actually don't know, but this is how I would go about it. And then I was like, is that right? And she's like, I don't know. That's why we would be hiring you. She's like, we don't know. But everything that you shared about how you think about it is exactly what we need at this company. She's like, you remind me a lot of me when I, was starting out. And she's like, the way that you've talked about it, the way that you've thought about it, that's actually what we're looking for is how would you go about getting the information we don't have? How would you think on behalf of our ideal client? And where would you go to be visible to them, to develop the relationship with them, to eventually for us to sell and create partnerships with them? And I was like, holy crap. I thought I was walking into this thing not qualified, didn't know the answers. I don't know anything about like SaaS products and centralizing certifications and all the things. But yet, what the best companies in the world do when they look for marketers is how would you go about figuring out who is your person, where are they at, what do they need to buy, and then what do you need in order for that decision to happen? So those are literally the steps. So I would just want to walk you through. These are literally the steps. So the first question that you want to ask yourself, okay, it's going to seem basic, but we got to start here. We have to start here first. Who is your ideal client? Not just who you can serve, right? Because if you're brilliant, you are smart, you have lots of life experience, you have expertise, there's a lot of people you could help. But who is the most qualified? Like, who do you really want to serve that is best poised to take advantage of the best that you have to offer, right? So who is your ideal client? And then even think a step further in terms of who is your most qualified client, because ideal client, if you can help a lot of people, that could be a dime a dozen. There's a hell of places you could go for that. And it could be potentially low quality leads, right? Low quality, low intent, low alignment, right? Who's your most qualified client that wants the best of what you've got? So that's question number one. Now, based on the answer to that, where are your people at? Where are your people at? Where do they hang out in person? Where do they hang out virtually? What are other brands or organizations that they are a part of? What is in their ecosystem? What is in their ecosystem in terms of where they spend their emotional and mental currency? Like, where is their attention going, right? We need to know that because social media could be part of it, but it may not be the full story. Especially, I would say, if you are selling to an audience that uses social media in a very different way. Some people go on social media just to follow their friends and family. They're not necessarily shopping. They may follow some of their favorite brands. So they may be following like makeup or shampoo, but they may not be following to like hire a high ticket consultant or coach or whatever it is that you offer. They may not be doing that. So like we need to know, where are my people at? Where are they spending their mental attention? And figuring that out. And you probably already have some insight into that, because if you are some variation of your ideal client, what was in your attention span? Where were you spending your time? What were you consuming? What were you doing? What were you listening to? Where were you going? You need to know that. Question number 3. So number 1, it was who's your ideal client, and not just who you can help, but who is the most qualified. Number 2, where are your people at? Number 3, how can you be visible to them where they are at? So again, this can be social media. Often is the simplest, the easiest, right? If they are there, but may not, we need to understand how they would interact with social media if it was social media, and there may be other things. So then you want to ask, in terms of how can you be visible to them? Essentially, that means how can you be where their attention is or where their physical presence is? This is important because when we put all of our eggs in the social media basket, we may be missing a much more aligned, high ROI place to be visible and or develop relationships where you could land a client the same day that you are visible there, simply because you are in a more curated, aligned room that has your people in it that is much less busy and much less noisy, right? So we have to be able to ask those questions so that we stop thinking social media is the market for like every product ever and every type of ideal client. It can be, but we have to think about what that is. So how can you be visible to them? Which means how can you be where their attention or their physical presence is? So far I've said 3 questions. Who is your ideal client? Specifically, who is the most qualified? Number 2, where are your people at? Number 3, how can you be visible to them where their attention or their physical presence is? Number 4, how can you build a relationship with them, right? So building a relationship with them is like, how do you invite them into your world? How do they opt in? How do they subscribe? How do they follow? How do you get in front of them more than one time, right? So this is where marketing comes in. This could be like opt-ins. It can be getting email addresses. It can be, in some cases, if you're running retargeting ads, like putting, trackers in for retargeting ads. It can be getting them to follow you or connect with you on LinkedIn. It can be lots of different things, right? So how can you build a relationship with them is essentially, how do we keep this going? How do I give this person a line of sight into me and my words and my thought leadership and what I'm doing, right? So this is like where we market. This part of this is problem awareness. Like, how aware are they of the problem that they have? Would they agree that the problem is what you think that it is? How can I educate them? How can I nurture them? How can I build trust, right? All of that, that's the marketing bit. Then finally, question number 5 is, what do they need in order to buy, essentially, right? What do they need in order to buy? What do they need to have the awareness? What do they need to have the clarity? What do they need to have the trust? What do they need to have the urgency to buy what you have to offer? Now, this is going to look very different if you're buying $2.99, whatever, shampoo, which is low risk, low consideration, versus if you are paying $10,000 for a life coach that's going to be all up in your business, all up in your trauma, right? It is very different. So the price point matters, and the person, it could be the same person. So that same person might be buying $5 shampoo as hiring a $10,000, coach or something, but the level of risk is different. The level of trust required is different. The level of specificity in what they're looking for. Cause it's like, yeah, you could like spend $5 on something and be like, I don't really like it. Whatever. No big deal. Right. So we have to understand what we're selling. This also goes for if you have a low ticket offer versus a high ticket offer. Sometimes you see tactics that are really good for low ticket offers, but they're not good for high trust, highly specific offers that are thousands of dollars, right? So this is why I personally am not employing a Reels growth short video strategy in my business, even though it wouldn't have a downside technically, other than the fact that I only have so many resources within my business. And that is just not the most lucrative, profitable form of lead generation for me because I sell $10,000 offers. I sell $10,000 one-on-one coaching. I sell $10,000 reclamation mastermind, right? So it is different. I'm going to talk to you about Reels specifically because I just think a lot of people get tripped up on them, especially when they think about being seen and visibility and lead generation and things like that. Not everything's applicable to you. So fifth question is, what do they need in order to buy? So what do they need in terms of being aware that the problem exists, clarity, trust, urgency, right? And so sometimes this also requires safety, right? So they may need information, but sometimes they need safety as well. And the more vulnerability is required of your client, the more safety matters, the more trust matters, the more they could potentially be exposed, lose out on something. Like the higher the risk is for them financially or emotionally or whatever, they need that as well. So like how they feel when they interact with your brand matters, especially when there's more safety involved. An example of this is one of my clients is a photographer and videographer, and there's a spectrum of safety that is required. If you are just marketing pictures, we don't really need a lot of safety. Do you have pretty pictures that I like? Yes or no? Okay, you're hired. But when you are a photographer or videographer and you are extracting someone's stories and you're kind of afraid to be seen on video and you're afraid to be authentic and you're like, gosh, but what do I have to say matters? The same person needs to create safety in their marketing because their ideal client feels vulnerable and exposed making this purchase decision. And generally, this is also a higher ticket offer, which is why it is not just about your title. It is about answering the question, which was one of the 5 questions I asked, is what do your people need in order to buy? So what is the awareness? What's the clarity? What's the trust? What's the safety? What's the urgency? What do they need in order to buy what you specifically sell? Right? So I'm going to repeat the 5 questions. Who's your ideal client? Where are your people at? How can you be visible to them? How can you build a relationship with them? And what do they need to buy? Those 5 questions, right? So with all of this being said, I want to take a pause here, okay? Because sometimes it can feel like it's harder to answer those questions for yourself, but it's much harder to not, and then to keep investing time and energy into tactics that either are 20% relevant to you, not relevant to you. Meanwhile, your precious time and energy and resources could be spent elsewhere that could have more aligned clients, support a higher ticket offer, have faster results, or just feel more aligned with you in the way that you want to market your business. Not everybody wants to build a marketing strategy that requires live energy, showing your face in the camera all the time, right? And you don't even necessarily have to do that. The role of social media could be to nurture your people versus visibility, right? Many of my clients, that's what they do. The role of social media is to nurture existing leads, and their lead generation is happening elsewhere. And then social media is where they build a relationship with them, which means they don't need to be posting all the time. As long as social media does its job of explaining who you are and building that trust and resonance, then it's done its job. So you don't need to live on social media to do that. And so I don't just say this because I'm like, ugh, social media. I love social media. I also don't want it to be the difference between, I don't want it to do the whole job of my business. I don't want it to be visibility, nurture, and selling. I don't want it to be all of it, right? So this is why I say this to you, is that your marketing can look very different from someone else, not just because of who you sell to and what you're selling, but because of how you want your marketing to feel. Like, do you want it to require your physical, presence, in the moment, live feed, face, all the things? Or is your strength writing? Is your strength, do you want to develop more close proximity relationships and you really like speaking? You can do all of those things and they can still work as long as you're answering the 5 questions that I talked to you about in this episode. I will also say another thing that is important is, what is the buying process for that person? Are they the final decision maker? Because if you are doing B2B, which is business to business, then you got to think about what's beyond that. So business to business is not just, is your customer a business owner? Because we're all like, a lot of us are business owners. B2B is where there is more than one decision maker, where the person that you speak to first cannot actually say yes, because there's a chain of command. There's other people that need to be part of it. There's a whole process. They need to talk about funding. They need to talk about whatever that is. They have to be able to put it to more than one person. When there is a chain of command and there is multiple people along the decision-making process, you also have to understand who are they? So yes, you need to be appealing to the gatekeeper, essentially. The gatekeeper, who is the gatekeeper? What are they looking for and what's important to them? But then you have to understand who else is involved and who do you sell? How can you prepare them to either have the conversation or bring you into the conversation? So another person, another type of entrepreneur that gets tripped up with a lot of social media advice is B2B, people who work almost exclusively with organizations, with company contracts, corporate contracts. Even if you're a coach, if you come in and you have like group coaching offerings within an organization, you're not selling to the people that you're going to coach. You're selling to other people who decide whether to bring you in or not, which is why the answers to these are universal. In the story that I told you at the beginning of this episode, where I was interviewing at this SaaS company, software as a service, and it was for centralizing certifications, it was B2B. Right? Their companies, their clients were other organizations, in some cases, huge organizations, right? So I have to come in as a marketer and bring my little marketer brain and answer these 5 questions, which I will repeat one more time. Who is your ideal client? Think beyond who you can help and think to who is the most qualified. Number 2, where are your people at in their attention span and in their physical presence, right? Number 3, how can you be visible to them? Number 4, how can you build a relationship with them? And then within there's a lot of nuance because that's marketing, right? But how do you build a relationship with them? Basically, what do they need to hear from you, right? Then number 5, what do they need in order to buy? Think problem awareness. What do they need in terms of education? What do they need in terms of trust? What do they need in terms of urgency to say, okay, what's going to make somebody like finally go ahead and make this investment, right? So this is so important because of all things in entrepreneurship. If you do not know how to create a strategy for your business, you will continue to outsource it to other people selling you tactics. So discernment comes from information. Discernment comes from a decision-making protocol, a decision-making filter. And this will also allow you to think about, like, even think bigger, because it's like, okay, if you can solve this for one business, then you can launch other things if you want to, whether it's like a journal or any other like physical product, or whether you want to sell to organizations, like you will have this forever. This is why I coach the way that I coach. I coach so that my clients get smarter and wiser and are able to make decisions so that they aren't depending on someone to say like, is this right or wrong? It's different for you to come to me and say like, what do you think about this approach? But if you are like, I don't know, I'm just doing this because my coach told me to do it, that's not helping anybody. All it's really helping is for the person to keep paying to have somebody tell them what to do. Right? So like, I don't want you to invest with me to ask me the same questions in 6 months or a year. I want you to be like, no, I'm good on that. I got that. Here's now what I'm thinking. I have new problems now. I have new problems I've earned because these strategies that I've created or co-created with you are working. And now I have a scaling problem or a team problem or a leadership problem or a visibility, like imposter syndrome problem, because now I have bigger problems, right? Like that is how it's supposed to look with a mentor, in my opinion. And I think that whenever we sell something, we need to arm our audience and our clients in particular with context, because context is what allows people to make more empowered decisions, to understand why they are doing what they are doing. And this is the work that I do with my clients. This is why I call myself a leadership coach first and then a business coach. If you notice, whenever I introduce myself, I'm like, I'm Mariela de la Mora, and I am a leadership coach and business coach for women of color. Because leadership means you are permanently different. You have new skill sets and new emotional intelligence and new abilities that you will always have. You are permanently different. You are elevating. Your capacity is different. Your awareness is different. Your problem-solving ability is different. That is what I do first. So you are not going to be the same person with me in 6 months or 12 months. because literally even you just watching me and listening to me coach other people, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense, right? And I'm not just saying that to say that, but I'm saying that like you should feel smarter and wiser when you're working with a coach, not just a good student. And I think because we're so used to, if I'm a good student, I'm going to get results. And there's a lot of talk around like, you just have to listen to your coach. And I get like, yes, you should trust your coach, but you always should understand why you're doing what you're doing and also co-sign it. You can absolutely have resistance. You can absolutely say, okay, you know what? I have some resistance, but I'm going to do this because I trust my coach, but you always should know why and definitely know the difference between tactics and strategy, and definitely know that not all trends are meant for you. Not all trends are applicable to you. I'm going to answer a question that I posed earlier in this episode before I close this out, because I want you to understand, like when I said there's a reason why I'm not intentionally not choosing, let's say, short form video reels growth strategy for my business. And that is because for me, selling a $10,000 offer, when I think about if I were to put a lot of my resources, my team resources, my time, all the things into putting out a bunch of short form reels. By the way, I actually still want to do that, but for different reasons, right? It is that if you were to do that, the way that a reel gets pushed out is based on attention and entertainment. So if you're creating something, basically Meta, whose job it is to make money for Meta through capitalizing on attention, is going to say, oh, so-and-so was entertained by this. Who else might be entertained by this, right? So they will push it out to people who think that they have similar interests. That does not always align with purchase intent, right? So if I were to put out, 3 reels a day, I would grow. People would follow me. Some of them would be my ideal clients, sure. However, when you think about me selling a $10,000 offer, yes, could my marketing optimize and all the things? Yes, sure. But the quality of those leads isn't going to be the same as if I get a new lead from actually, let's say, sharing on a podcast whose audience is very aligned with mine in terms of demographic, in terms of values, in terms of interest. And then I go deep and I share my thought leadership there. If 10 people came to follow me from me sharing my insights and a very aligned podcast, those are going to be 10 way higher quality leads than if 1,000 people followed me because a reel went viral. Does that make sense? So it isn't that the strategy is bad. I'm still investing time right now in coming up with a system where I can do like talking head and all the things, just because I know that it's a gift of mine. But part of my intention with that is converting my current audience, not just like being just seen by someone else, right? So even the intention of the reel is more thought leadership for my current audience, converting my current audience versus I'm going to put something that's going to be universally appealing so that it goes viral, so that it's seen by more people. That's a different intention because the quality of those leads are not going to be as good as if I were to go to more aligned ways of being in front of my ideal person in communities and in spaces that are already aligned with my person, where there will be higher purchase intent and more alignment. So I hope that this gave you a lot to think about. I hope that this actually gave you a lot of permission to take it or leave it and to give you a framework for take it or leave it. Okay. And if you need help with this, I can help you. This is literally my job. If you can listen to my podcast, right? If you listen to this podcast, it is obvious I have done this for my entire life. I didn't just stroll up in here and be like, I'm going to just start selling stuff on the internet. I literally sold stuff for my whole life. This is my job. And you will become a better marketer. You are going to become wiser. You're going to become smarter. You're going to have stronger discernment. You're going to have stronger problem-solving skills because of me, because of working with me. I'm not just saying this to be like, you will. You have to pick mentors that make you smarter. You have to pick mentors that are going to elevate the way that you think and give you context and abilities that you will always have, not just be a good student who is implementing a system. You have to get beyond that. That helps you when you are first starting. But if you are not just starting, where everybody's foundations are the same, eventually you do need to build the leadership skills and the discernment skills. And I am your person. I also understand that when we are building a business, it activates all kinds of insecurities and triggers, and money stuff comes up, visibility stuff comes up, people are going to disagree with me, stuff comes up, capacity comes up. I get that. That's why I work with women of color and daughters of immigrants, because I understand, despite everybody has their own view on entrepreneurship, I will say, I personally have the thought that entrepreneurship is probably one of the hardest things you're ever going to do in terms of what it activates and what it triggers within you, because you're basically constantly growing something that's activating your sense of safety. And being able to work with that, recognize where it comes from and work through that and hold space for that is what I do. This is what I do, right? So I would love to work with you. As of right now, the only way is through one-on-one coaching. There are two ways that can work right now. Number one is through private coaching for 6 months. We meet bi-weekly, but we kick off with a VIP day, which means at the end of the VIP day, we are going to co-create your strategy, both for mindset and safety, as well as for your business. You are going to have those 3-ish main steps outlined literally from our sales call. But then in the VIP day, we're going to dive in and actually flush those out and make those decisions together. Then by the time we are actually meeting biweekly, we're just coaching on what the plan is, right? So you're going to have the strategy at the beginning, and then we're going to have 6 whole months to work on it together for you to become a different person, for you to practice, iterate, come to me. You're able to message me Monday through Friday on Telegram. I got you. I've literally been a one-on-one coach for 5 years. Some people can't wait to dip out of it. I freaking love it. It's my favorite thing. I absolutely love it. Love my mastermind, love close proximity coaching, love mentorship, right? So $10K for 6 months. And there's also payment plans available for that. The second option is month-to-month Telegram coaching for $700 a month. For that, I don't have a public link to buy that because I want to assess whether or not it actually makes sense for you. So for that, what I would recommend is that you send an email to my team at client@marielladelamora.com, or you can message me on Instagram. So I'm on Instagram at mariella.delamora. Send me a DM. But sometimes depending on whether I'm following you or not, I may not get it. So I would just say, if you want to be extra sure, send me a DM, but you can also send an email to my team. And I'll just ask you some clarifying questions. If it turns out that we are a good fit, I will send you an intake form essentially that's going to ask a bunch of upfront questions again, so that I know and I have the full picture of you and your business. And then from there, we will come up with a plan and we'll just talk back and forth in Telegram to identify like, what are your biggest opportunities? Some of the things that I've done in Telegram coaching are folks that have been in business for several years, but feel like they're not getting traction, or when they do land sales calls, it's from referrals or people who have basically done the selling for them. And then I look at your marketing and I'm like, okay, this is like, you need better positioning, right? Like, I don't understand fully how you're different. Is this the thing that they're looking for? How do we know? And I teach them how to work with the information that they already have in their business, how to more strongly position their offers, to make them more competitive, to insert their thought leadership, to use client language versus fluffy language, to talk through just mindset, challenges, their own beliefs, frustrations, anything like that. This is essentially life and business coaching. That is $700 month to month Telegram coaching. It's also a good way of, if you're thinking like, gosh, I don't know if I would want to invest $10K in working with Mariela. It's a really good way for you to kind of see what my style is, how I think, how I coach, how safe you feel with me, how seen you feel by me. And you can then decide from there, do I want to work with her long term? That's also why I introduced it, because I love voice noting and working through Telegram. So I was like, why not create an offer where folks can, essentially just try it out, get some clarity, and then see what's possible for them, right? A lot of the times when you work with me, I debunk a lot of the things that you thought that you needed to do. I debunk a lot of the rules and the do's and the don'ts and the shoulds and the, all those things. And you really start feeling like the future of your business can look so much different and more clear and lighter than you ever thought possible. So second way is to get yourself on the wait list for Reclamation Mastermind. We don't open our doors again until September, but Reclamation Mastermind is for women of color and daughters of immigrants who want to book out their businesses through thought leadership. Typically, my clients there have been in business for a few years. They already have a validated offer, meaning they're already actively serving clients in that offer. They're not trying to figure out how to sell it necessarily. Granted, you can need help with booking sales calls and things like that, but you're not new to your offer or new to business. And that is where clients have hit 6 figures, multiple 6 figures, have exponentially grown their visibility, their demand, speaking invitations, pivoted from B2C, meaning selling to individuals, to working with organizations, all the things. So get yourself on the waitlist for Reclamation Mastermind if that is you. And if you have questions about working together, if you have any questions, send me a DM on Instagram. And yes, I look forward to hearing from you. Would love to hear any takeaways that you have from this episode. Would also love if you could rate this podcast so that more people can find it, and share this episode if it resonated with you, and would love to hear your takeaways. So that's it, y'all. I will see you next week. I went off on this one because it is so important, and I hope that it helped you. I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.